Greetings! Stay a while and listen as we cover Azmodan, the Lord of Sin. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, it's that time, Heroes of the Storm, another character, and this time we are looking at Diablo 3's Azmodan. He comes into Heroes of the Storm as a specialist. Quite the specialist he is, too. He is very good at summoning, and he is very good at sieging down towers and mercenaries, depending upon how you talent him. Starting things off, we shall look at Azmodan, and of course his skins. The standard skin, as you see here, and of course the different variants of green, kind of an ashen grey, really, with green trimmings, and a blue. Very blue. Comparing his standard skin to his master skin, he gets quite ornate. It looks like he's found himself a legendary 6-piece set. There you go. Lots and lots of things on him. Not too different on the color variations on the master skin, it would appear, which is kind of disappointing, but there you go. But the best skin is, of course, Azmodan. For you, Warcraft fans out there, this one is definitely a fantastic skin. I do like the look of it. And the red. So there you go, those are the skins for Azmodan, and so now we'll go ahead and get into the game to take a look at his abilities and talents. Alright, to start things off, Azmodan has a unique mounted animation. He does not have a unique playstyle when it comes to his mounting. He plays just like any other mounted hero, but because he's so big, he can't actually get on one. So instead, when you hit the mount button, you have the channel, and then you see a few flames around his feet, and then he just moves just as fast as anyone else with a mount would. So no special mechanics to it. It's not like Rhaegar, where he can't be dismounted when he's hit. You hit him and he will be dismounted just like anyone else. Alright, let's start off with his abilities. We start off with the Q ability, which is the Globe of Annihilation. It is 8-second cooldown, it is a Globe of Destruction, it does 73 damage on impact, and it is long range. So go ahead and get the minions. It says it's long range. Let me show you. Let's go back here. I'd like you to see where the edge of this is, and I'm going to go ahead and target, and alright, from here is where I hit them. There we go. And I'm way back here. It is indeed long range. As you can kind of see from the map down here when I activated, that large circle is the extensive range as to which you can actually use this ability. You do not gain any advantage to it, and as you can notice, there is a travel time as far as how far it can go. But this ability is exceptionally useful for stopping enemies at range from gathering objectives if you need to. You don't have to use it that far away, you can use it this close as well. Very large AoE, does a decent amount of damage. This is going to be one of the abilities that you use for your wave clear. Azmodan's abilities are all ranged, as you can see here. His basic attack is a ranged fireball. Azmodan is very good about pushing minions, pushing waves, and of course hitting things at long range. His next ability is the Summon Demon Warrior. It is a 40 mana cost, it has a 10-second charge mechanic in which it holds 2 charges, so at 20 seconds you'll get both of them back. So if you stagger them, you'll have one back every so often, depending upon how you stagger. So if you use one every 5 seconds, you should get it back roughly within that time frame every 5 seconds. You spawn a Demon Warrior, it marches towards a point, and they have 230 health. Again, this is at level 1, and they attack at this point for 23 damage. They last 10 seconds. So they're kind of like Anubarak's Beetles, except for it's an active ability, and you can summon 2 at a time. Now, even though when I go to use it, it looks like a skill shot, really what you're just doing is picking its initial direction that it's going to march, and then it's going to just kind of go off on its own, and then it's going to start going towards the lane, just like every other creep minion does. So as you can see, that pretty much is what they are. They are additional lane minions here. They do not last for very long, but because you can have 2 of them out, you can very easily push a lane forward with a whole bunch of minions by using these. You can power them up through talents, and there are some talents that will help you have even more should you need them. The final ability that he has, a standard ability, is All Shall Burn, a 6-second cooldown, but it's a channeled ability. Let's go ahead and toggle this really quick while I talk about this. It's a channel beam on an enemy. It does 68 damage a second. The damage grows the longer it's channeled to a maximum of 136. It does 25% more damage to structures. So the damage grows to more than double its initial assessment, and it does more damage to structures. So we can... let's push a lane so you can kind of see this. This is really your main siege mechanic. Now, it can definitely do a lot of damage to players as well because it is a channeled ability that increases in damage over time. Now, it does not have a stopping point. It stops when you run out of mana or you hit the button or you move. So if I use it on Arthas here, you can kind of see there it is. It's channeling. It's kind of like Arthas's AoE that he's using right now. I'm not going to stop until my target is dead or until they get out of range. Or I run out of mana, obviously. So there is that. You run out of mana, obviously, and then, well, you can't sustain it anymore. But yeah, it does have the range as you see here is the range that it has. So if Arthas were to try and walk outside of the range of All Shall Burn, then it will just instantly stop. But as you can see, if he ignores it, it's just going to do a lot of damage. So Azmodan is really good at pushing. Distractions. Alright, where was it? Now, so let's go ahead and show off what this thing can do when it's allowed to channel on a tower. It is very much like a Void Ray mechanic from StarCraft. As you can see, it's just going to constantly pick up damage. This is only at level 2, and you can already see that I'm doing a lot of damage to this tower. That tower is almost dead. So this is a big important point for anyone that's going to play Azmodan, or anyone that may be playing against Azmodan. You really can't ignore Azmodan. I have seen games won and lost because Azmodan was allowed to get onto a keep or a core and channel using All Shall Burn. It is a very, very powerful mechanic. It's especially powerful if Azmodan is allowed to run in a lane with minions. So I've covered his basic abilities. So one thing you may have noticed I haven't covered yet is his trait. It's because his trait kind of ties into his abilities a little more than some of the others do. His trait is the General of Hell. It's a 30-second cooldown. It's basically an extra ability that you can use. It's not passive in the least. You summon a General of Hell at an allied mercenary minion or summon, and the General will march with the target. It grants 15% increased damage and health to all nearby friendly mercenaries, minions, and summons. So this makes Azmodan very lethal when combined with a wave push on a creep lane, or even with minions with summons, such as Nubarak or maybe Abathur, anyone else that may have a summon that I'm not mentioning at this time, because this will buff them. And it is a global range when you use this. I can't use it on buildings at this time. I'll have to summon minions, but I'll go ahead and toggle minions. But I'll go ahead and use it, and you'll kind of notice that it pops right on top of the minions there, and it's marching with them. It's going to attack with the minions, and it's causing them to have additional health, to do additional damage. This is why Azmodan is great at pushing. You may have noticed that the damage of the Orb of Annihilation is really not super great, but you combine it with the fact that the mercenaries that it's pushing with are doing additional damage. On top of that, I am throwing down my mercenaries, which have their own health and damage and are being buffed even further by the General of Hell. And you'll notice that the General of Hell lasts exactly 30 seconds, exactly the length of the cooldown to summon another one. Of course, he can be killed, so you can lose the General of Hell early, but when used properly, it can really help push a lane. And because of its global use, as long as there is a minion push somewhere, Azmodan can help cover it. Azmodan has this very global presence on the battlefield. His Orb of Annihilation does not have a global cast on it, but it is so large that you can typically, if you're in the middle lane, all you have to do is move a little bit into the jungle to push against an enemy minion line from your position. That's just how large the casting range on this thing is. So you can use Azmodan to cover more than one lane if you need to. As far as his XP contribution goes, because normally you have to be nearby when you do this, that one is not a question I can necessarily answer. It's very difficult to get that kind of data from me by myself. So I can't really say that if I hit an enemy line from far away, if it helps with the contribution. I believe they've made it so that if you did contribute against the lane in some way, you get some portion of that. But again, please don't quote me on that. That's not something I'm 100% sure on. But as you can see, his abilities are very much synergized together. You can put down more minions, you can buff them, and then of course you can do a lot of damage in an area if you're focusing on the minions, or you can focus that damage to a specific target with All Shall Burn. So he has kind of answers to everything. Downside to Azmodan, of course, is that he's not very strong by himself. He can't run away. However, if you look at his health pool, he does have a fairly generous amount of health. So he is somewhat tanky. He can't run away, but he's not exactly the easiest to kill. You can't burst him down as easily as, say, some assassins, or maybe some of the other specialists in the game. At level 10, Azmodan's first ultimate is the Demonic Invasion. 100-second cooldown rains down an army of grunts. Here at level 20, they do about 120 damage per impact, and they're demon warriors which deal 60 damage and will die after 4 attacks. So they don't last very long. They're kind of like demon warriors, like the ones you can summon on your W key. But the big thing with this, it's not a super huge range. You can see about here is about the edge of it right there. It's not a super huge range, but it doesn't need to be. This is really an ability that seems designed around pushing on buildings, pushing on towers, maybe even mercenaries. It's not super powerful against enemy heroes simply by virtue of they can pretty much get away from it and they can kill your minions. So this is really one that's kind of a utility-based ability. So I'm going to go ahead and use it now so you can kind of see it. And it does do damage when you rain down on it, which is nice. It does a decent amount of damage, so you can use it against heroes, but as you can see, the big thing about it is the fact that you've got a whole bunch of them that are just going to do a lot of damage in kind of a focused area for you. And the fact that they are minions with health, which apparently don't die if they're not attacking. They die after 4 attacks, as the description says. But they can be the distraction for you, so I'll go ahead and go here. I'm going to get hit by this tower, but I can go ahead and summon my minions. You can see there they go, and I can just combine that with All Shall Burn. And again, this is kind of why you don't want to ignore an Azmodan. Very easily by himself, he can take out keeps and the core. Again, this is kind of more of a utility base, not really very much anti-hero. Azmodan can definitely hurt a hero, but you're really focusing on All Shall Burn for that to happen. Maybe a few dunks with Globe of Annihilation, since you can really do well at pushing against enemies that are trying to run away because of the long cast range on this. Now, if we refresh the forts, we can look at his ability at level 20. The upgraded version of Demonic Invasion is Perishing Flame. When the grunts die, they explode and do 150 damage to nearby enemies. So this is probably the one you'll use if you want to really hit an enemy. So let's go ahead and see what happens when we hit Arthas. As you see, not a ton of damage right away. They are chasing him down. We'll see if they do a bunch of damage when they explode. Let's take a look at what they do to the towers. See, there they are, they're starting to blow up and they're doing additional damage. Not a bad modifier, it is a little bit extra damage. But as you can see, Azmodan has a few additional choices here at 20, more so than most since he has a total of 5, because he does get Resurgence. He also gets Swift Storm, which will allow him to stay mounted after taking damage, and Storm Shield. So you do have a lot of options at this level. Alright, if you're looking for something with a little more utility to help your allies, that's less focused maybe on killing towers, you can get Black Pool. This one has a 20-second cooldown, so very short, but it has charges, so you can get up to 2 of these. You create a pool that empowers Azmodan and his demons, any allied minions, and increases their attack and ability damage by 75%. And the pool lasts for 5 seconds. So the downside to this, as you can see, is that it empowers Azmodan and minions. So really, you can't buff allied players with this. But the fact that you can increase the damage and basically the attack and ability damage of minions is pretty strong. You put down a whole bunch of your own allies, your own minions, put down a General of Hell to buff them further, and let's say you're maybe with a Nubarok or something, maybe you've got an Abathur Locust in there, or a group of Locusts, and you can buff them all, and they'll do a whole bunch of burst damage. So if you've already got a pretty strong push going, and you don't need to create your own group to kind of counter a building, like the Demonic Invasion is great for going in when you've got nothing else around you, like these towers right now. If I needed to get in these towers, I could summon a bunch of enemies. But if I don't have that, or I want to help with a push naturally, I can go ahead and summon this Minion of Hell. Let's go ahead and get a couple of my own demons in, and then we'll go ahead and put the black pull down. And as you can just see, just look at how much damage they start doing very quickly. And of course it does buff Azmodan, so I can put it down, start channeling, and you see you do a bunch, even though he ran away right away. There was a bunch of damage that just went out on that Arthas. Let's go ahead and make him run away again. But as you see, massive buffs. If nothing else, you can massively buff yourself with this ability. And the fact that it's on a 20-second cooldown and you get a couple charges means that you can be very liberal about using it. The 60 mana cost is also not that bad. It's about the price of a Globe of Annihilation, although not as cheap as a Demon Warrior, although when you consider that you can put down 2 Demon Warriors at one time, that is probably one of your most expensive abilities. Keep in mind that your trait is free. It does not cost you any mana, so honestly, the General of Hell is one of those things you're probably going to want to be putting down anytime you get a chance to put it down. And again, because it's global, you can put it down to help maybe an allied lane. Maybe your lane's doing fine and you're pushing just fine. You want to help another lane, you can put that down. Now at level 20, you can buff this circle even further. So even though right now at the level 10, it's not that much, it increases minions. I say not that much, it's actually pretty powerful when used right. But when you think about it in the grand scheme of things, it's pretty much just a buff to minions. You can make it better and make it more interesting for team fights by getting 5th Circle. 5th Circle allows the attacks of anything that you've buffed with your black pool to also slow movement and attack speeds of the enemy by 40%. That's pretty powerful. So let's say you get a bunch of minions and they're surrounding an enemy and they might not care. Like let's say it's late game and they really don't care. The minions are surrounding them and they're not doing a ton of damage, and they may not realize that you've just put a black pool under them, which is not only buffing their damage, but now all of a sudden that person doesn't have the speed that he thought he had a moment ago. And of course here I can just do it with myself, which is slowing him down naturally. Let's just go ahead and cancel it so we can try and see it here. Clear cooldowns. So I'll put it down, and there you go. You can see I am slowing him down because I've used my black pool. So attacks and abilities of allied units within the circle, slow movement and attack speeds of anything that they do damage to. So you can put it down under yourself and just start channeling, or maybe hit a bunch of stuff with the Globe of Annihilation, and all of a sudden an ability that you were using just to increase your damage has now been used to help further your allies' gain. And keep in mind that because it is a slow, you are slowing down their attacks and movement speeds. I do believe this would also allow this to proc any assassins that have the Executioner talent. That's something I'm going to kind of focus on a bit more lately as I look into these, because Executioner is a massive talent that allows for a lot of damage, and I think that if you're looking at a hero, you may want to know which characters can use that, which can help their allies to use Executioner, or maybe allies that need it. And in this case, honestly, the only thing you really got for that is black pool, as far as I'm aware. I do believe the other abilities, the other talents, don't give you anything to proc it with, but as we go through, we'll go ahead and talk about that. Alright, level 1. You have a nice hearty choice of 5 different talents. Pretty interesting, but let's get past some of the ones that are either more common or not as interesting to look at. So you get Bribe. Every time you kill a minion, you get a stack, and at 20 stacks, you can use it to bribe a mercenary instantly. It holds up to 50, I believe. 50 or 40. which means at most you can use it twice. So if you're holding a lane and you're killing a bunch of mercenaries, or not mercenaries, but well, even mercenaries do count towards it, but if you're killing mercenaries and creep and you get a full stack of bribe, you could go up to, say, a giant camp, just pop your bribe twice to bribe each one of them, and you've got an instant giant camp on your side. And you can combine this with Mercenary Lord to make them even stronger. It makes it very easy to go ahead and get a group of mercenaries on your side. It is probably a talent that's maybe a bit underrated and overlooked quite a bit. It can be useful, although Bribe is also one of those things that can be very quickly overshadowed, because you look at Azmodan, he can pretty much very quickly take mercenaries by himself anyway, depending upon how you build him. And there are other characters that may be more suited to doing your mercenary needs. So, for example, Gazlo, he's very quick at killing them. He can do it without taking a lot of damage. Bribe is really there for if you're getting pushed, or if your push is maybe going well and you don't want to leave lane for very long and you want to go get a mercenary very quickly, you can do that. Leave, pop, pop, get back into your lane. Healing Ward is the next one. This is typically seen on support, but you see a few tanks get it, and in this case we've got Azmodan getting it. Since he is a mercenary lord, it does kind of make sense that he would have this. It's basically you just put down an AoE circle that heals everything in the area. I'll go ahead and show it off here real quick. It's got a fairly decent AoE effect. You can cover an entire lane with it. It will heal everything in the area. It's not very big. It's 3% maximum health for 10 seconds. Spare Nothing modifies All Shall Burn, your channel ability, so it destroys 1 ammo a second from structures. This is almost identical to Demolitionist, except for it's actively using an ability rather than your auto attacks. So you can very quickly decimate a tower's health as well as its ammo. Honestly, if you're going to be using All Shall Burn on a tower or something like that, you're probably already going to be killing it fast enough that destroying its ammo doesn't really seem like something you're going to have to worry about. Taste for Blood modifies the Orb of Annihilation to where it permanently gains 1 damage every time it kills something. I'm going to be very honest with you. It's an interesting talent. I kind of like the idea of it. And I've seen other talents kind of similar that I like, but this one is one I don't care for specifically. And I say that because really the Orb of Annihilation, while it's a nice ability, you can have a hard time getting that final kill with it on mercenaries. Now, or creep lanes. Now, later in the game, this becomes less and less of an issue, because eventually you'll get to the point where anything that's half health or maybe even a little more, you're going to kill right away. So you'll start getting more and more damage. It's just that since this is a level 1 talent, it's one of those things where you're kind of tempted to want to use it right away, but it's going to be very difficult to use properly, because enemies that get close enough for you to kill with the Orb of Annihilation will die within a couple hits of one of your creeps anyway, and the chances of missing it are pretty good. Now, if you're pretty good at landing those hits and you think you can do it, this might be for you. Honestly, gaining permanent power increases over the course of the game can be exceptionally strong when used properly. For me, though, this is not necessarily a talent that I care for. The last talent here at rank 1 is Sieging Wrath. This increases the impact damage by up to 50%, depending upon just how far your Orb of Annihilation goes. So to kind of show that off, I'm going to do a couple resets here. We're going to start off at kind of really close range to show what this does. Now, it only goes up to 50%, but you'll get an idea here. So we'll go ahead and do it close range. And you see just a little bit. Let's go ahead and go back. And we get up to 50% at max range, so I'm going to go ahead and do it here. And as you can see, a much bigger chunk with it. So this can be very useful to an Azmodan that's very good at hitting long-range targets. If you're really good at gauging where an enemy is trying to run and you want to hit them from range, this can be quite useful for you, getting 50% additional damage on that. You can also modify Orb of Annihilation even further to do even more damage beyond this. So late game, Orb of Annihilation becomes very, very powerful. Early game it might seem like it doesn't do quite a bit, but later on it definitely can. Alright, looking at rank 4, as you can probably guess, this is going to be a fairly lengthy one because Azmodan is a character that has a lot of options. So starting with some of the easier stuff to get out of the way, we're going to look at superiority. Non-hero damage reduced. Damage taken from all non-heroic sources reduced by 50%. This is a pretty obvious one, and one I've discussed a little bit with the new Barak. It is very powerful for taking on mercenaries. It's very powerful for taking on the creep lines, but it can also be useful for getting into towers. Since Azmodan can go in and channel his All Shall Burn and start taking down towers very quickly, superiority can be very useful for you because you can get into a tower's range, and if you're getting hit by that tower, you kind of don't care. Towers can slow down your attack speed depending upon what tower is hitting you. Usually the keeps will slow you down. The core does damage to multiple targets, but doesn't usually slow, I believe. But they only slow basic attacks and movement usually. All Shall Burn, being an ability, is going to have a constant damage that it's doing. So even if you're getting slowed by the tower, you don't really care because you're sitting there and you're channeling your ability over time. So the fact that you're getting hit by the tower and taking half that damage can be very useful. If the enemy doesn't, if they think that you're going to die to the tower anyway, they might be quite surprised that you don't.
Choose a talent.
Army of Hell, pretty standard. Increases maximum number of charges, 2 to 3 for your demon warriors. If you like having a lot of minions in the lane, you can definitely pick that one up. Although, honestly, some of these other talents really seem to be far more interesting comparatively. So, honestly, this is one I would probably end up skipping. Burn the Weak, structure damage bonus now applies to minions and mercenaries, and it is increased to 50%. So if you look at the original description, you can see that it does 25% more damage to structures. All Shall Burn is very powerful. You get that bonus to minions and mercenaries, and you increase it even further, so now it's 50% increase. Well, let's just kind of take a look at how quickly I can kill some mercenaries, maybe even kill a tower with this. So I'll go ahead and target one of these, and just very quickly goes down. So we're going to go ahead and try it on this tower here to kind of show it off. I'm going to go ahead and grab Demonic Invasion to help with showing this off. So I'm going to come over here, put that down, and just once again keep in mind that this is at level 10. I'm not taking a lot of damage, and I've almost completely killed a keep by myself. This is now under a controlled environment. This is in a vacuum, really. This is something that you're probably not going to get away with in the real game, but I just wanted to show off what that 50% damage can really mean for you. Now, alternatively, if you were looking to do more damage to heroes with your All Shall Burn, because really, when you're fighting heroes and you're going into a one-on-one scenario or maybe even to a team fight, Orb Annihilation is really great, but you're probably going to want to do a lot of damage over time. Gluttony is probably the one you're going to want to pick for that. It's 15% of the damage dealt is returned back, so that allows you to channel on an enemy. So maybe you're doing this back and forth with someone, and this will allow you to channel it and get your damage back. That combines very well with the later talent where you can actually move while channeling it, which makes it act a lot like Tychus's ability to fire up his chain gun and move at the same time. There's some really nice options here, really. Burn the Weak is really great if you're going to go out and do some murking, but it is also very useful. Superiority is also very useful. These two honestly deserve to be on the same tier, because if you could use superiority with Burn the Weak, you'd be a little bit too powerful against mercenaries. You can do a lot of damage that way. Superiority feels like it has more all-around usefulness to it, just because it will help you take reduced damage in the long run, but Burn the Weak can really be powerful if maybe the enemy team is doing really good about getting mercenaries. Now by level 4 that's really hard to tell, but that is something to consider. Of course, getting healing back is nice as well. But let's take a look at this last one. This is Bound Minion. This modifies your trait, the Hell General. Using the General of Hell on a lane minion will permanently increase the minion's damage by 100% and its health by 300%. So really what you're looking at here is, you're looking at promote, honestly. If you've ever seen Promote on any other heroes, Promote gives you 2 stacks of Promote. And you can use it on E2. But in this case, since it's tied to my Hell General, it's a little better because I've just permanently increased the damage on that catapult and its health. Plus, I also have my General of Hell in the line, which is giving it even more health and even more damage. So this is pretty much Promote on steroids with something of a longer cooldown. Kind of not. Because Promote holds 2 stacks, Hell General only holds 1 at a time, but I can use Hell General every 30 seconds, where I do believe Promote is something more of a 45-second to a minute cooldown. But as you can see, I've already got 2 catapults permanently buffed in this line and doing a whole bunch of damage, plus the Hell General buffing them even further, so you can just see the raw amount of damage. If you ever saw the video I put out regarding Zagara and what she can do with Infest, this is kind of the same thing. Not on quite the same scale. Zagara with 2 catapults with Infest, because they increase damage by like 300%, is definitely massive. But since Promote also increases health, what that means is, or in this case, not Promote, but Bow Minion increases health, it means that the catapults are also harder to kill, which makes sure that your enemy is going to be distracted a lot longer. Alright, level 7, and once again we have 5 talents to look at. Yes, I did mention this will be a long one. Okay, so the basic stuff. First aid, every minute you can heal yourself for 35% of your max health. This is a heal over time though, so it takes you 6 seconds to get that back. The next passive type ability here, we have Enduring Warriors. Your Demon Warriors last normally 10 seconds. You can increase that by 50%, so they'll last 5 seconds longer. So they will last 15 seconds. Really nice for getting them to push down a lane. Not one of the more interesting ones in my opinion. The others in the line, the other 3 I think are probably the ones that'll be more interesting, more worth your time. Mercenary Lord is the obvious one for going out and doing merking. You get additional damage from siege giants and additional health on knights if you're there to help capture. You don't have to be the one that kills them. Your team can kill them and then you can go into the capture zone. As long as you're in the capture zone in some way, this will activate. And that's really powerful and honestly can get underestimated by some people. I have seen some minion pushes that people didn't expect it to get as far just because they didn't realize they were either buffed by Mercenary Lords or people didn't realize just how powerful those mercenaries could be. You also have Infernal Globe. You have a faster cast time and you add a damage over time to your Orb of Annihilation. So you can see here the cast time and the travel time are reduced by 40%. And you also deal additional damage over time at the impact. So if you get the increased range or even the increased damage with kills, this can be quite useful because it's going to cast a lot faster. So if you're really good at, again, if you're good at leading and you know where enemies are going to be, this is quite helpful because then you get the impact zone where you want it a lot faster. It makes it a lot easier to gauge where your attack's going to be. And that and the additional damage over time can be quite nice and just continually add on damage that people may not expect. However, if you're going for an all-shell burn build, this is the one you want to look at. This is Master Destruction. It may not seem like much, but you're reducing the mana cost of all-shell burn from 16 to 10. You're reducing it by essentially more than a third. That's massive, especially since we're talking about a channeled ability. You can sit there and use your All Shall Burn for quite a long time. And again, you can combine that, going here into level 13 here in a moment, you can actually use March of Sin, which allows you to cast All Shall Burn while moving. You move at reduced speed, you're at 75%, but you can follow an enemy and take them out with this. And this is something that is very useful because the enemy may be trying to run away and you're just constantly doing damage to them, constantly hitting them. And that is how typically Tychus gets his kills, by revving up his minigun and following enemies as they try to run away. So since we've already talked about March of Sin here, let's go ahead and look at the others. We have Blazing Demons. Demon Warriors will deal 23 additional damage to nearby enemies every second. So this is basically, it's an interesting change on a standard talent. A lot of characters get a talent where they do AoE damage around themselves, or they burn. Some characters have to activate it in some way, like Diablo has to use his flame waves. In this case, Azmodan gets it by putting it on his demon warriors. So he can summon a demon warrior, and not only is the demon warrior doing its normal damage, but it's got that flame aura. So rather than you yourself, that was kind of interesting how he went that way. Rather than you yourself doing the additional damage, the demon warriors are doing it for you. This kind of reinforces the fact that Azmodan is more of a general in the background, kind of giving the orders, not going up there himself, but he's augmenting his allies every way he knows how, and in this way he's giving them additional damage. The other talents are kind of passive yet again, because him being a summoner, they give him a lot of passive abilities in order to modify his gameplay however you want, which means Azmodan can be quite useful in many different scenarios. You have Relentless, which has the duration of disables. Because you do not have very much to rely on as far as escapes are concerned, this can be useful if the enemy is pushing on you a lot or focusing on you a lot. 50% reduced stun and slow time is very important for getting away if an enemy is focusing on you. Otherwise, you could get Hellforged Armor, where the Demon Warriors take 50% less damage from non-heroic sources. We already talked about how the 50% reduced damage is useful to you. Imagine putting that on your allies. So I'm going after a tower and, well, maybe my ultimate is down. Maybe I don't have my demonic invasion. All I can really do is rely on my demon warriors for about 10 seconds. Well, with the demon warriors getting the Hellforged armor, they can survive a few hits from a tower while you're sitting there and doing damage and possibly channeling. Alright, level 16, standard abilities, imposing presence, enemy basic attacks are slowed. So Azmodan, as you can kind of guess, while he's a specialist, has some talents that belong to the tanking tree, and he has a health bar. As you can see here at level 16, I have quite a bit of health. Azmodan is a fairly tanky character, and I believe it is because of his lack of slows and his lack of general strong damage to in like a one-on-one scenario. Basically, his damage is going to come from, as I've mentioned before, all shall burn. Now, granted, it's a lot of damage, but the main flaw to all shall burn when you're trying to use it against a single target is that you can be stunned very easily out of it, and the enemy can also leave your range, and then you're down on a 6-second cooldown before you can use it again. So having a tanky presence by having a high health pool and by having some tanking talents can certainly help. Speaking of which, Blood for Blood would be another alternative if you're trying to be a little more defensive, but also maybe provide some utility for your allies. You can steal enemies at maximum health, 15% of which, and it is a slow, which means it will help your team by slowing the enemy down, keeping them from getting away, and proccing Executioner. The other two, which are far more interesting, are Battleborn. If Global Annihilation hits an enemy, a Demon Warrior is summoned at the impact point. So I've got Blazing Warriors, so what we're going to do is we're going to see if this will proc the Blazing Warrior. So anytime I do damage with my Global Annihilation, I will now get a free Demon Warrior. It's really great for pushing on a line. As you see, there is the minion. I'm going to go ahead and clear the cooldowns. I want to get a better idea as if they're having if he has the blaze. Yep, as you can see, any talents I've used to modify the Demon Warriors will also modify Battleborn summoned Demon Warrior. So Global Annihilation, when it hits, gives me an additional minion. So you see here, I can go ahead and use it on this building, and boom, there's a minion right there, and it's soaking up tower shots. It's a great way of getting additional minions on the battlefield should you need it. The final talent here at rank 16 is Demonic Smite. The General of Hell will now periodically blast enemy minions with demonic energy, dealing at level 16 820 damage. Now that's a lot. What this pretty much allows you to do is put down a General of Hell in a line that may be getting hit by a mercenary. So I'm going to go ahead and put it down here so we can try and watch it in action. And you should see he's every now and then he's going to pop this Demonic Smite, and I'm kind of looking out for it here. We may not have a very good chance of seeing it, but you can kind of see the damage that it's already doing. That's a high amount of damage. Now, it doesn't happen against enemy heroes, as you can see, because Arthas is still sitting on a good amount of health. But enemy mercenaries, especially ones modified by Mercenary Lord, that's still quite a bit. And that can be very helpful to stopping an enemy mercenary push. So if the enemy team is getting a lot of mercenaries, Demonics might be something to consider. It is not one I typically use. I typically prefer, say, Battleborn, but it's very powerful, and it can help push back, again, those enemy mercenaries, or just help your lane push farther and farther into the enemy base. Alright, let's try that again, because I believe I actually didn't activate the ability when I tried chewing it off last. Kind of watching him here, and let's see him cast this smite. Okay, yeah, it looks almost... Okay, I saw it right there. It's like a little fireball that he casts, and it hits the enemy. It didn't seem to show the damage number to me when he cast it. So, not one that's very easy to see. It is probably going to feel more passive than anything, and it again is only against mercenaries or against enemy minions of some sort. So again, very useful for pushing, not going to be very useful against enemy players.
Choose a talent.
I've already gone over both modifiers to the ultimates. You've got the Perishing Flame, which causes your minions summoned with Demonic Invasion to blow up, and you've got Fifth Circle, where your black pulls will allow you to slow the enemy. Neither one of these is honestly particularly great. A lot of the modifiers usually are really powerful, really useful, and certainly there are some uses here. I think Fifth Circle is probably the best one he has of the modifiers, but you really do have some pretty nice ones here in the form of coming back into the battlefield or helping your allies. Storm Shield is fairly useful when used defensively. Those shields get burned through kind of quickly, though, with some of the assassin damages that are out there. Yes, it's nice, and with a good team, can probably be very useful. Resurgence of the Storm, though, I've talked about this one before as well, is probably one of the most powerful ones, especially if more than one person has it. Really, I think that Resurgence of the Storm might be one of Azmodan's better level 20 talents, and that's including over some of his buffing abilities. Fifth Circle might be his best. Next would probably be Resurgence of the Storm. So even if you were to get Demonic Invasion, the Perishing Flames seems to me a little lackluster. I haven't really seen it provide enough damage to totally be worth it. But again, if they all blow up at the same time on a target, that's quite a bit of damage. Honestly, I think this is going to come down to maybe personal opinion about that one. But Resurgence is definitely very strong. Swift Storm, probably not one of the best. However, again, you got to keep in mind Azmodan is a very ripe target for kind of being picked off. And because Azmodan plays the game usually from a distance from a lot of other characters, you're usually going to be hitting your Globe of Annihilation from range. You're probably not doing too bad with this one, because you can mount up, and while you're moving into your position, if an enemy decides to try and ambush you, they can't knock you out of your mount. So you can still get where you need to go, and you're moving 20% faster so you can run away. So this is probably really your only escape. But because it requires you to be mounted, and it won't stop you from having your mount animation canceled, so they can still stop you from getting mounted, you're probably not going to get a lot out of this one. So again, it really feels like when it comes down to it, your best bets are Resurgence and Fifth Circle. But again, this is all just based on personal conjecture and personal opinion based on how I've played Azmodan, and you might have better luck with any of the other talents. So if you feel like looking at any of these talents and maybe formulating a build, you want to mention it, by all means please do. If you have any questions about them, please mention them. I look forward to any kind of discussion you may want to give about Azmodan and his talents and which ones you might think are pretty powerful. If you've had better luck with some of the other talents and you want to give me your success story, actually I would look forward to that, because I would like to see how they work. I always look forward to other opinions and points of view as far as how these builds can work and how useful they can go together. Sometimes people can come up with very, very unique setups and builds just out of nowhere. So ladies and gentlemen, this has been a look at Azmodan, and as usual, what I will be doing as I will be going over poke quotes. So we'll go ahead and zoom in. I want to thank you for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.
Do not tempt me, mortal. Soon you will all serve me. You press too far, or perhaps not far enough. I haven't felt this overconfidence since Bastion's Keep. If you think my current form is impressive, wait until you behold my floating head taunts. Leading the Sin Lieutenants is not easy. Sloth is late. Wrath is belligerent. Pride thinks greed is stealing. Envy is jealous, greed gets away with it, and gluttony tries to eat everyone. As for lust, well, she is very distracting. Neverlumps and woozles. Here, there, everywhere. These damn Nephilim torment me even in my sleep. Minions, remember, there is nothing more toxic or deadly than a Nephilim child. A single touch can kill you. No, I don't know how the Maiden of Lust is still a maiden either. I'm feeling hella good, so let's just keep advancing. You think your family is bad? I grew up with the Lords of Hell. Our sibling rivalries devastated entire realms. Those who believe there are only 7 deadly sins lack imagination. This is starting to hurt more than my piercings. Can everyone just stop for a moment? I need to write a series of lore books about this battle, and then spend some time scattering them about. What? How dare you refer to me as a lesser evil? I prefer the term evilly challenged. Oh, I am so Azmodan with this.